Hello, this is a lecture to do a quick overview of the essay that you read by Sarah Song, What Does It Mean to Be an American? Okay, so the essay, as you know from reading it, does two major things. The first thing that it does is that it explains why civic solidarity matters for a democratic society. And then it describes three models of civic solidarity. And each of these models try to answer the question, what does it mean to be an American? Okay, so let's start with talking about what is civic solidarity. And I think a lot of you in our discussion were on the right track in terms of defining what civic solidarity is, but I think that there was some room for improvement to sort of deepen your understanding of civic solidarity. So there's two words in civic solidarity. So let's start with the second word first, the word solidarity. So what does solidarity mean? Well, solidarity means that it means unity. It means that individuals are united by a common interest. And, I'm a huge Brewers fan. Okay. I think I've mentioned that before. And one of the things I'm really liking about the 2021 team, but we've had this before as well, is that they really do seem to have a strong sense of solidarity. There's no big egos on the team. Everybody plays their role and kind of comes through. And at the end of the day, they don't see themselves as sort of like individuals, right? But I mean, they are individuals, of course, but they see themselves as a part of the Brewers, right? They have this common interest, and the common interest is to win the World Series this year. We'll see if that happens. And so when you think about solidarity, it's a sort of individuals with a common interest, maybe a baseball team. It could be your family, right? I mean, families oftentimes are, you have a lot of different personalities and you might not always get along, but you're united in terms of being a member of the family. So solidarity is that sense of unity. So what is civic solidarity? Well, the word civic is derived from the Latin term civis, and it means citizen. Okay, and so that when you sort of combine civic and solidarity, what you come up with is that it's the unity of citizens, right? That citizens come together and they basically see themselves as united as one sort of political or civic community. And so when you think about civic solidarity, what it is it's this unity within a particular community, not a baseball team, not a family, but it's unity within a political community, like a country. And so civic solidarity is a sense that we see each other as united into one political community. That regardless of our different points of view, and regardless of our different backgrounds, and regardless of our religions or our countries of origin, that civic solidarity means that we all are Americans, and that we see each other as a part of this broad project with a common interest that unites us together. All right, so according to Sarah Song, civic solidarity is an important component of democratic society. And so you were asked that question in the discussion. The question is why does Sarah Song think that civic solidarity is an important component of democratic society? People did an okay job in the discussion with that, but a lot of people were just sort of identifying parts in her essay for the reasons that she gave for why civic solidarity is important for a democratic society, but didn't go into enough depth of actually explaining what she meant. And so let's take a look at what the reasons that she gives for why civic solidarity is important, and let's dig in so we get a better sort of depth of understanding of her reasons. Okay, so the first reason that Song gives for why civic solidarity is important for democracy is she says that you need civic solidarity because it supports the values that are essential to a democratic society. And we talked about that last week. We talked about what values need to be in place for a country to be truly democratic. So let's take a look at what some of those values are and how civic solidarity supports and nurtures these key values. One value is that in a democracy, you have to be willing to listen to others, particularly those you disagree with, and respect that they have respect what they're saying and treat them in a respectful way. That doesn't mean that you can't disagree with them, right? But that you can't just in a democracy, you can't just basically shut them down, not listen to them, and like basically name call, or the cancel culture, right? Where you're just disrespecting people. You've got, when you listen to people and talk to people, particularly when you have different points of view, you've got to show respect. Likewise, that you need to be willing to moderate your own views, okay? So that when when you have a very strongly held belief, but that you realize that many others in our democracy don't hold that same belief, you've got to be willing to say, not my way or the highway, but you have to say, you know what, I'm willing to compromise. I'm willing to moderate my point of view so that more people in this country are, that we can meet the needs or satisfy the concerns of, the most people in the country. And we can see how civic solidarity really supports this respect, willingness to listen, and the willingness to moderate your views. If you see everybody as American, right, that we're all in this project together and that we're all united by certain, important values, then it's easier to sort of say, you know what, at the end of the day, we're all on the same team. And so you're willing to listen, be respectful, and to moderate your views. Another concept is this idea of mutual toleration. And this isn't something that's in the essay, but it captures a lot of the points that Song is making. What mutual toleration is not, it goes beyond just this willing to listen and respect others, but when you're in, as it says there, that partisan and ideological rivals, you have to see them and accept and also communicate that they are loyal citizens who love our country just like we do, right? So what does that mean? Well, you might be a hardcore Republican or a hardcore Democrat. You might be a hardcore liberal or a hardcore conservative, right? But when it comes to mutual toleration, you've got to, you can't see the other side in a democracy as the enemy. That if their side gets elected or their policies get put in place, it's going to be the end of the world, right? You can't see them as demons. You have to basically say, look, even though I strongly disagree with the other party or strongly disagree with the other ideological perspective, you say there's mutual toleration, that they're trying to do their best to be loyal citizens, that they love their country just as much as I love that you love your country, and that you just you communicate that you mutually tolerate each other rather than sort of condemning them or shutting them down. So you can sort of see those 2 points are related. Pluralism, we talked about that last class period. That pluralism is this idea that all groups can compete in the marketplace of ideas and interests, and that when a viewpoint wins in the marketplace of ideas or in the marketplace of elections, that at the end of the day, you've got to accept that they have a right to govern because they won the election or they won the marketplace of ideas. Again, pluralism, you need civic solidarity. You need to be able to, in order to let all viewpoints be heard, you have to say, well, we're all Americans, and therefore we all get to contribute to this free exchange of ideas. And also to say, you know what, they won. I want them to, support me and at least respect that we won and recognize that we won the election, just like I want to recognize that the other side won the election too. And that's easier to do if we're all united by civic solidarity. Forbearance is the final concept that we'll talk about here. Forbearance is necessary for a democratic society because it's defined as a restraint on the exercise of power, or a restraint on your exercise of liberty as well. Forbearance is saying, you know what, I have the power to do it, or I have the freedom to do it, but I shouldn't do it, or I choose not to do it because I can see how exercising my liberty might harm others, or exercising my power, even though I have that authority, might harm others. A lot of people in the discussion said that what it means to be an American is to be as free, like do whatever you want and live your life however you want to. Well, that extreme exercise of liberty, you could do that, right? You have the freedom to stand on the street corner and, yell at passerbys, right? As long as you're not getting in their way. But maybe you shouldn't do it, right? Maybe you should exercise restraint. And civic solidarity supports forbearance because we see the people we're exercising our liberty on or our power on, we see them as a part of our team, right? And we're more likely to pull back and restrain our exercise of power and liberty, particularly if our exercise of power and liberty is harming the common good. So, I kind of went on a little bit too long there, but those are just some, of the values that she touches upon, and this sort of deepens that or expands it. If you're interested in learning more about mutual toleration, forbearance, and the importance of those values to maintaining a democratic society, I suggest to you to read this great book called How Democracies Die. And it looks at countries that were democracies. We think that once a country is a democracy, it's going to be a democracy forever. And that's not the case when you look at other countries. Democracies can rise, but democracies can also fall. And so this great book by Livitz and Ziblatt, How Democracies Die, develop these ideas even further if you're interested. The second point that Sarah Song makes about why we need civic solidarity is because we need civic solidarity because it's necessary for the pursuit of redistributive justice, and that's a key component of democracy. So redistributive justice is defined as the fair allocation of resources among diverse members of a community. What that basically means is that we, pool our resources. We have resources as a society, as a country, and then we've got to fairly allocate those resources. And oftentimes that allocation of resources, particularly in a democracy like ours that has a lot of diversity, it's going to be allocated to people that are not necessarily like you, don't have the same religion, maybe don't have the same, skin tone, the same gender, right? And so that when it comes to redistributive justice, that things are going to be allocated among a diverse, among diverse members of a community. We allocate those resources in a democracy because the democracy wants to take care of the most vulnerable, the elderly, the sick, those who can't take care of themselves for mental health reasons or addiction reasons, children, okay? And so as a democracy, we're committed to making sure that the vulnerable just don't go into the street and die, but that we as a society have an obligation to care for them. We also in a democracy recognize that that some people, that while we strive for equality, that there are some inequalities of life chance that people don't have any control over. So for example, you don't choose what family or neighborhood you're going to be born into, right? As a child, you don't make that choice. You just get born, right? And you could be born to a really wealthy family in a really great neighborhood, or you could be born into a poor family in not such a great neighborhood. And so in a democracy, we distribute resources in a way that offsets those inequalities of life chance. And so we need civic solidarity for redistributive justice because it allows to see those in need, those who are getting resources, that we see them as like me because we're all Americans and we're all in the same team, right? If we don't have that strong sense of civic solidarity, that we're all united as one strong political community, right? It's easier to say, screw you, man. I don't care whether you get, whether you are able to eat, or whether or not you're able to get the health care that you need, or whether or not you're able to, attend a decent college, right? It's easier to turn your back on that individual. The stronger civic solidarity you have, the more likely you are to support those in need within your political community. Okay, and then the third point that she makes about civic solidarity, and she says, it's better to find unity around a political community rather than finding unity around race, ethnicity, or religious identity, okay? Sure, race, ethnicity, and religious identity can create really strong solidarity and unity. But for a democracy, right, coming together around race or religion, it's kind of an exclusive type of solidarity. because if you're not of our religion, you're not a part of the team, or if you're not of the same race, you're not a part of our team, or if you don't speak the same language, you're not the part of the team, right? And so that kind of solidarity is not one that works best for democracies. Civic solidarity works better for democratic societies. Okay, so we've defined civic solidarity and we know why it matters for a democratic society. Now we need to find the best model for creating civic solidarity. And this is where we're going to take a look at those three models that she offers. That we need to have a model of civic solidarity that's thick enough to provide the unity necessary for justice and democracy, right? I like to sort of think about that you need to have a model that creates a strong enough fabric to like hold us together as a nation, holds us, keeps us united. But we also want a thin enough model, so the fabric should be thin enough so it allows for diversity, right? Because diversity, religious, racial, ethnic diversity, pluralism is a really important aspect of a democratic society. So let's take a look at the three models and see what their viewpoint is, and then you can think about which one you think is best. All right, so here are the three models. We're going to start with Habermas, constitutional patriotism, David Miller, liberal nationalism, and Charles Taylor, deep diversity. And as I stated in the notes about this, that there's an extra credit quiz you can take after watching this video, but there will be a question on the midterm exam that deals with these models and deals with the concept of civic solidarity, because it is so essential to understand democracy in the United States. So keep that in mind as you're learning about these different models. Okay, so let's look at Habermas's constitutional patriotism. From Habermas's perspective, he doesn't think that what should bind us together is race, religion, or ethnicity. He thinks that what should provide solidarity, that what binds us together should be an allegiance to shared political ideas and values. For him, to be an American means to understand, and embrace the ideals and values that are in our founding documents, the Declaration of Independence, the United States Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and any other documents that are sort of identified as capturing key democratic values, like Lincoln's Gettysburg Address or Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech, okay? And so that to be an American means that you understand and embrace equality, democracy, natural right, the rule of law, limited government, etc. And this is great because this is what we all are going to be learning about this week, right? We're looking at the founding documents. And then from there, we move on and we take a look at federalism, key principle, look at civil liberties and civil rights, again, key concepts that are important to democratic society. And so for his perspective, you don't need to share a race, ethnicity, or common language. That what you need to do is just have shared political values. And if we have these shared political values, that's going to provide a solidarity that's going to be vibrant enough to maintain a democratic society. Okay, so that brings us to David Miller, liberal nationalism. From his perspective, he says that civic solidarity must go beyond creed. So he's kind of a criticism of Habermas. He doesn't think creed is enough. For him, you have to have creed plus culture. And if you have political creed that goes along with culture, then you're going to get a stronger fabric that's going to hold our civic solidarity together. For him, what it means to be an American is to embrace the creed, okay, but that you also must assimilate to an Anglo-Protestant culture, so that just embracing the political values of democracy and equality, natural rights, that's not enough. For him, what it means to be an American also means that you've got to embrace the culture that is here in the United States. That the United States is a deeply religious culture, and that there's also a lot of pluralism and plurality in religion. We have a lot of different religions within the United States. So he means that to be an American, you have to respect and assimilate to and understand the role that sort of our deep religious traditions play within the United States, both historically and today as well. part of our culture is individualism. I saw a lot of that in terms of what people were saying, when asked what it means to be an American. They said individualism, that you work hard, work ethic. You work hard, you don't depend on others, you do what it takes to succeed. And that's David Miller sees that as an important part of our culture that needs to be embraced for our civic solidarity. He also recognizes that that what it means to be an American is embracing the creed, but also recognizing that English is the dominant language here, and learning English, and also valuing sort of the cultural heritage as well. Not that David Miller would never say that that you can't change your interpretation of what our history is. He'd be, of course, open to that. That's why it's liberal nationalism, right? It's not this authoritarian fixed understanding of nationalism. But that, when we have sort of an idea of what our dominant cultural heritage is, that as an American, you need to recognize that and embrace it to a certain degree. Okay, so let's look at the last model, which is Charles Taylor's deep diversity. Charles Taylor says that the other perspectives, the Habermas and the David Miller perspective, deal with first level diversity. That, yeah, sure, we recognize that we have differences, but those differences are submerged under creed. They're not really fully taken into consideration when thinking about civic solidarity. For Taylor, what truly binds people together is a recognition that what it means to be an American is different for different groups that are living in America. So what it means to be an American is different for an Asian American, different for an African American, different for an Anglo American. And this week you're going to be, we're going to be doing a really interesting discussion that looks at whether or not the founders of the United States should be celebrated. And you're going to be, watching a video that has descendants of Frederick Douglass reading from a book that he wrote called What to a Slave is 4th of July. And I think that's a really good example. I mean, he wrote that in 1852. Slavery was still alive. Frederick Douglass was a slave and became a freed man. And his experience of what it is to be an American is profoundly different than other groups, right? And people who are descended from slaves, or people who Asian Americans who faced certain discrimination, Anglo Americans or European Americans who came over initially as Irish or German and were discriminated against, right? The experiences of Americans is diverse, and that diversity of how they experience what it means to be an American needs to be recognized. And when it's recognized, it's actually going to bring us closer together, and it's going to strengthen our civic solidarity. And so he says that all groups have different and distinctive ways of belonging to America. And it's important that we recognize that, because it really provides a strong fabric for civic solidarity. So what do you think? And these are the kinds of questions that you're going to be asked on the midterm exam when it comes to dealing with this essay. So which model? And you guys started that work in your discussion, but I felt like it could be better developed, and that's what those discussions are for, right? To get your feet wet. And we're going to go on and, develop those ideas when we get to the midterm exam. And so which model do you think provides the best answer to the question of what does it mean to be an American? Which provides the best model for strong civic solidarity? Is creed alone enough to bind us? Do you think that newcomers to the United States need to embrace creed, but also to embrace cultural America, like David Miller suggests? And what are the advantages of recognizing the distinct ways different racial, ethnic, class groups experience America? And what are some drawbacks? So those are just some questions to kind of get you thinking there. And hopefully this video helped deepen your understanding of the essay. And now you can go earn yourself some 10 extra credit points. So thanks for listening. I appreciate your time, and I'll talk to you again soon.